What we're going to talk about tonight is what I know about pathways. And I have already heard this evening that someone has surpassed me, Helen Groth. She has completed 11 paths and is working on 3 more. She is the person that I will come to for conversation after this meeting. But let me share with you what I know, which is very little. The shrieking in the background is my Chihuahua, who is very upset that I don't have the door open so he could be in here at my knee barking. So please bear with that. Probably about 6 months ago, I attended a club meeting where I was asked to talk about pathways. The 2 speakers prior to my presentation prefaced their presentations with the words, "This is not a pathways presentation." Fellow Toastmasters, that set me back a peg because it was after pathways was the only game in town. So I talked to Gwendolyn, who is our director for the Pathways Rollout Project proponents, and I told her that I would like to present tonight how people could look at pathways from a different perspective, and hence the title, There's a Project for That. So that's the backstory. I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to walk through a few slides, and I want you to open your mind. Think beyond the walls of what Toastmasters says a pathway project should be. And let's see if together we can explore the world of pathways and come up with some better ideas. So tonight, what I want to talk about are 3 elements that I want you to consider for pathways. The first one will be find projects to fit your presentation. We all have stories within us, things that we want to say. And when we look at pathways, we may think, yeah, that's not going to work for me. So what can I do? So we'll talk about that. I want you to think beyond the standard definitions of what each project suggests that you do. And I think that's a fine word to use, is suggest, because we know that everyone sees the world just a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about that some. And then for those of us who have been in the Toastmasters world a while, in the old program, we could put a peg on the wall that says, that's the presentation I'm doing, and then we'll look through the books to find one that fits. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight also. Did you know that Toastmasters International has not told you what you have to talk about? If you look through the project, they'll say, talk on any topic. Any topic, my friends, and that's in any level of pathways. Very cool. When we first started out, for those of you who remember when we first started in, you only could work in one level. They wouldn't let you go to the next level until you had check marked the first one off. Well, they changed that. They listened to us, the members, and they said, okay, you can work on any level using any topic. You just can't turn them in until you put them in order. So keep in mind that no matter what level you are looking at, you can talk on any topic. And that's a key point that we'll talk about more tonight. So when we talk about any topic at any level, if we just kind of review what it is that Toastmasters wants, then we can see that we have a world before us in just the 2 levels alone. Remember, I talked about the club meeting that I went to where the first one, the gentleman said, this is not a pathways presentation. It was an icebreaker. It was an icebreaker. He could dropped right into level 1 and be off and running on his path. The second speaker that evening was talking about an ongoing family saga. Well, he could have used the research and presenting. He could have used evaluation and feedback if in fact he only wanted to work in level 1. Again, it doesn't matter what topic you choose, just choose one. And as you go into level 3, remember that this is very much like the old competent communication manual. Any topic that you've got, you can put into any one of these elective projects. While you only get, I want to say, credit for the 2 that it says that you need, that doesn't mean that if you have an off the wall project, you have to do something in a hurry because the speaker didn't show up. Go to level 3 and choose something there. Remember that Toastmasters is not necessarily about you as the speaker, but it's also about the evaluator. So give your club members something to evaluate. Choose any of them. And then, of course, as you get further and further into pathways, the projects do become a bit more structured. Level 4, they give you great opportunities to be creative. I consider level 4 the most creative of all the projects because for me, they force me to try something new. I haven't done a podcast yet, but I'm looking forward to that. And I have dealt with difficult audiences. Every week sometimes in my club meetings, if my presentation goes awry, and then I look at my Zoom meeting and I see the weird glances I'm getting. For instance, at a club meeting the other night, I approached a topic that I knew was going to set people's hair on edge. It was all about the COVID-19 vaccine. And I took the position that perhaps you ought to double think whether you're going to get it or not. And I presented all kinds of information. Some of it went over their heads. Some of it, I think, was cognitive dissonance where they didn't want to hear what I had to say. So their brains are going la, 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 la. But that's okay. That was a difficult audience. But a true Toastmaster takes the evaluations they get, as I did, rules them around in their mind a little bit and pulls out the nuggets that they can use next time. And what people told me is I don't smile enough. So I'm smiling. Write that down. Okay, let's move on. And then you get to level 5. Level 5 for me is more of a reflection on what I've done and where I want to go. Yes, it's somewhat personal because they want you, they being Toastmasters, they want you to think about who you are and where you're going and how you're going to present yourself. For the lessons learned in one of my clubs, I equated the teachings of Lao Tzu and I equated what I had done in leadership to that. So I wasn't tied to just what I had learned in the project, but how it had affected me. You can do that. You can use any topic that you want to complete your projects. I put a couple of examples in here that I want to explore a little bit. I'm not going to belabor them too much. The first one I'm using is in the project that I'm currently working on, which is the presentation mastery. And it's understanding your communication style. Well, when I think about communication style, I think about how I am affecting other people. And I have a whole speech around why I joined Toastmasters, and it was all about communication. But we're not going to go there tonight. That's a 5 to 7 minute speech in itself. But what this project says for you is that it wants to know the impact of your relationships on others or their impact on you. Very simple. It can be any topic again. And in my example, I'm giving you 3 to consider: spouse, girlfriends, boyfriends, husband, wife? How about your dog? Don't you have a relationship with your dog? How do you treat your dog? If you treat them consistently in the same way, they may either love you or hate you. They may bite your ankle when you're not looking. Just saying. Or they could be like my Murphy screeching outside the door because he doesn't think there should be any doors that block him from anything. He's a little spoiled brat. How about your kids? Do you have a relationship with your kids? How is their relationship with each other, if you've got more than one, impacting you? How are you impacting them? Things to think about. How about your cat? How about your parakeet, your parrot? Now, fish, you might have a problem with because I don't think they have any personality at all. Just saying. So think about that. If you're going to use this side of this particular level project, how are you impacting others? How are you impacting those you go to the grocery store with, going back to COVID, when you don't remember to wear your mask? There's a speech in that. Just saying, it can be on any topic. So the other side of this example is relationship impact on you. How are other people affecting you? How are you being affected by the news? What do you think about Antifa nowadays? What do you think about the national scene? What about all of the people that are trying to come to the United States for a better life? How are those relationships impacting you? Because you talk to people every day. Are these some of the topics you want to talk about? There's a speech in that. Think about it outside the box of how are you impacting other people in this example? Just any topic again, whatever it is you want. This was my example for this particular example. This is one of my favorite ones, visual aids. Remember, for those of you who have been in the old program, what you could do with visual aids? I would love for a musician or an artist or someone who crafts vases or any type of sculpture to use those as a prop for their presentation. One day, one of our speakers or one of our attendees tonight, Roger, talked about his bicycle and the gear that he wore. It was a great speech, and we got to see how his outfit and his bike work so well together. So that's just an example of one of the electives. There's tons of them out there. And again, level 3, you can use any of those topics to emote on anything, any topic. But I would like to see somebody play a guitar on stage. That would be fun. So let's move on. I'm moving through this very quickly, aren't I? I'm going to give you the gift of time at the end of this. One of the challenges I think that most people have when they're looking and working with pathways is they've got an idea for a speech and they're looking through all of the projects and they don't find anything that fits. I think people get very discouraged when they can't find something that will fit what they want to do. Remember, I talked in the old program that it could look through the manual and pick one? Well, I believe that you can also do that in pathways. Remember that Toastmasters is giving you a framework. They're not telling you what you have to do. What I like to do with this particular topic is say I want to do, as an example, a speech on leadership. I've got a lot of leadership. You heard that in my bio. But what I want to talk about may not be as a mentee or a mentor or a protege or any of those other topics that Toastmasters tells me that I have to do. That doesn't mean that I can't talk about the last time that I took a group of kids to the forest for a walk. There's a leadership in that. Think about those types of topics when you're thinking about trying to push a square peg into a round hole. You really can do it. You might have to shave it a little bit, make it rounder. But if you take a look at your projects and what Toastmasters says, again, they're talking about any topic. So it doesn't have to necessarily be about you. Did you observe someone else, using this as the example? Did you see someone else that you could talk about in this example, the leadership style, that you could talk about and then give your emotional impact because of what you saw? Think outside the box. You don't have to follow the exact structure that Toastmasters says you do. And I'm belaboring that because people get so discouraged when they can't find a project that fits what they want to say. So get out your hammer and your chisel as an example, and just find a way to put what you want to talk about with crumbs of what the project says they want you to do. Ethical leadership for me is a fine example. Ethics, as taught to me by the hospital that I used to work at, is totally different than what it might be in my personal life. For them, ethics was making the right decisions for people who were dying, whether or not they would pay attention to their last will and testament, as it were, on whether to cut off their lifeline or not. Ethically, the doctors make those decisions. You may have thought that you do, but you don't. In my personal life, I just had an opportunity, going back to COVID-19, I had an opportunity to work in the clinics that are currently going on for giving the vaccine through OHSU. After giving that speech the other night about some of the effects and the deaths and everything else that surrounds COVID-19, ethically, I could not see myself going out there and subjecting people to vaccines that they may not be well aware of what they're doing. For me, that was an ethical dilemma. Luckily for me, I took a different job. So just saying, so those are, and I could talk about the ethics of that if I wanted to go into a speech of that type. So hammer and chisel your speech until it fits into those presentations. Remember, it's any topic. So when you're telling your truth, as it were, whatever project you're doing, I want you to think about what you're talking about. And I use this roller coaster because life is a roller coaster, isn't it? There are ups and there are downs, and there are good days and there are bad. You can take that thought alone and weave it into any of the topics, any of the projects within the levels that you want to talk about. Again, my refrain this evening is it can be on any topic. All Toastmasters has provided is a framework for you to work within. And that, fellow Toastmasters, is a very short presentation on what I think about pathways and why when someone says, my presentation is not a pathways project, I want to say, why?